On this episode of Locked On Lightning, the Lightning have some tough decisions ahead of them this summer. We break it all down. We make some decisions of our own, but first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Thank you for making us your first listen. On today's episode, we are looking a little bit deeper into this Lightning roster. Who stays? Who goes? Well, we hope you're staying with us for all of that, and please do so by subscribing to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed. We are available on YouTube as well as in audio form, and we are free. So we're going to just cut to it right away. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Hopefully I don't mess this up. We're going to try and keep it professional here on Locked On Lightning, of course. So let me just break this down. So yeah, we're talking about, this roster. We got done talking about it. Well, we didn't really get done talking about it. We started talking about it a little bit here and there. So if you want to follow along, we're on Cap Friendly, but if you're on YouTube, it's right there in front of you. So we're looking at the cap hit, and we're also looking at the contracts. So obviously a lot of the top guys are staying on this team until really you're starting to see some money come off the books in 24, 25. Stamkos' contract is up after next year. He becomes a UFA. Interesting conversation to be had about him. Some fans think maybe it's time to part ways with him, while he still has some value. Whereas my opinion on him, to start off right away, is he's the face of your franchise. He's, I believe, probably the best player in franchise history. I would just think that it's a tricky situation anytime you do something like that. Anytime you trade the best player in your franchise history, you trade your captain, still the lifeblood of this team. I don't see how they do it. Yeah, he makes $8.5 million, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think that there would be too much backlash against the franchise in order for something like that to go over well in any scenario. I think, honestly, if the Lightning were ever to trade Stamkos, even in the next year or so, and they went on to win another cup, I still think it would just feel differently, I think, not only for the fans, but for the team as well. But obviously the names that are coming off, and we could talk about that maybe later on in the summer, because I've seen some conversation here and there on Twitter, in the comments section below on our YouTube channel as well. So very, very, like I said, very interesting conversation to be had. It's one of those conversations where, I don't know, there's many ways you could go about talking about it. So we'll stick a pin in that as well. But really, we're looking at the guys that are immediately coming off the books this summer, most notably Alex Killorn, who's had a phenomenal season. And what do you really do? What do you really do with Alex Killorn here? I mean, he's going to be 34. He's one of those players where the production clearly is still there. My issue is that, yeah, he's going to be 34, but at the same time, just for certain times in the season, like we saw with him this year, and had a good season, 100%. Very good bounce back season. He's an old 34. My only thing with Killorn is if he were to come back to Tampa, and I think there's a lot of mutual interest between him and the organization to get something done to bring him back. My issue, as kind of what it was with last season's signings, extensions of Sorelli, Sergachev, and Paul. I don't want the Lightning to get too crazy about some sort of long-term deal. I think we're all in agreement here that if Alex Killorn were to be on the team next year, it would have to be something in the 3-4 year range, maybe making about probably close to Corey Perry money. The length I'm not so crazy about. And if you don't know Corey Perry's contract, he made $1 million this year. So really not a lot. I don't know how realistic it is for the Lightning to be able to sign him to anything resembling the deal that he was on, making $4.45 million a year. I just think that with their cap situation, and their needs don't necessarily lie on the offensive side of things. Like I spoke about on the last episode, I think that priority A this offseason for the Tampa Bay Lightning really is the defensive core. You lost McDonough, you lost Ruda. Hedman, not saying that he's finished, but this year really was kind of an eye-opening experience for Lightning fans. So I think that at the end of the day, when you have guys like Steven Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, Hagel, Paul, Sorelli, the list goes on. When you have guys, enough guys like that could score, I wouldn't mind if the figure is too high, and I don't think it's going to get to this point. I think Killorn knows the situation very well in tune with the Lightning needs as well as realistic expectations. Now he could go somewhere and make the money, or somewhat close to 4.4, maybe even get 4.5. At the same time, he loves Tampa Bay. Even if he goes to another situation, how much of a possibility is it going to be able for him to be in the same situation where he's going to be able to have a chance to win the cup on a yearly basis for the rest of his career? I don't see where he could realistically go. If you look at a lot of the top teams in the league that are right there, a lot of them are just in the same boat as the Lightning for the most part. So I think, though, that if the Lightning, if they get to a number with Killorn where they say we can't go any higher and he doesn't budge, my thing, if I'm in Julien Brisebois' shoes, I look at him as though, as you know, we're willing to take that hit on the offensive side of things. We're willing to move on, as much as, you know, it would suck for the fans. But I think the Lightning could take a hit on the offensive side of things. I think they have enough depth to get by offensively, because, you know, if you let Killorn go, you know, you could slide up, I don't know, maybe Paul, or even if Colton sticks around, you have him slide up to that third, maybe even second line spot. You know, just something to think about. I just think, though, at the end of the day, I think really when we're looking at the NHL offseason, I really think that depending on what Killorn gets, how much he gets, for how long he gets, I think it's really going to dictate the rest of the summer. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that really that will be the first thing you hear when you're hearing the chatter really starting to pick up surrounding this Lightning team. So in the summer, about potential moves. Now we'll talk further about some of the other moves that can be made. Like I said on the last episode, if you didn't get to that, please go ahead and listen. It does tie in with this episode. There is some talent out there coming to the free agent market that we can discuss in terms of who is going to be available, who is going to be reasonable, and what can we expect for the Tampa Bay Lightning in terms of who can they sign this upcoming offseason, as well as the realistic expectations surrounding Ross Colton. I'm hearing a lot of chatter that basically saying don't be surprised if he gets moved at any point. So that's another thing to look out for as well. So we'll keep an eye on that on the chatter. And before we get to all those possible scenarios, I want to talk about one of today's sponsors, and that is our friends over at Built Bar. Now, if you're like me and you want to make a healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I got just the thing for you. Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and taste amazing. Seriously, they taste so amazing. You won't think they're good for you. You got to try this. And what makes Built Bars so good, you might ask? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate, dark chocolate. That's right, real dark chocolate. And so I'm not sure how they do it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And that's even better when they are healthy, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, with a whopping 17 grams of protein. So now you don't need to wait for a box to get delivered to your door. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, while you could still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. So that's either at your local Walmart or your Sam's Club. Pick up your 4-box of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. So go to Built.com or your local Sam's Club or your Walmart for the best tasting protein bar in the world. So this is a weird conversation, a very interesting conversation yet to be had for the Tampa Bay Lightning. A lot of questions swirling around this team going into a little bit of a rebuilding offseason. And yes, I 100% agree, or really double down, that is rebuilding. Not in the sense that you would think from a team that is not necessarily, in the ruts, not going to win a championship, but by definitely being able to win on a yearly basis, and being in the thick of it on a yearly basis as the Lightning are. I definitely think that for them, this is a rebuilding year, mostly rebuilding that last defensive line, or, trying to slide in players on the forward lines. Really, I look at the two main holes for this Lightning team. They're missing 2 defensemen who you could really put a lot of minutes on consistently and not have to worry about them, like we did the last couple of years with McDonough and Ruda. At the same time, their fourth line is probably out the door. I wouldn't be surprised if that whole fourth line, Belmar and Perry, are gone. Now, as for Maroon, yeah, he's a team player, he's a glue guy. You like to see a guy like that on a team, but I just think that it's time. If there was ever a time to get younger, faster, it would be now. Now, who knows how it. I think when you've won multiple championships with a guy as recently as you have with Pat Maroon, and make no mistake about it, he was a very big part of those 2 Stanley Cup winning teams. Big reason why they won in the first one in the bubble. Really, it's a delicate situation because, obviously you don't want to piss anybody off or leave on any bad blood. Having said that, his contract isn't up until next year. So my issue is, or my question to all of you, and please go ahead and comment below this video on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter. What is to do? What do you do about Pat Maroon? Do you kind of slide him into somewhat of that maybe fourth defense, that 7th defenseman spot, kind of like what we saw, similar to what Luke Schenn did for the Lightning in years past, could kind of play that versatile role between, I guess, I don't even know what you would call it, the stretch forward position or the stretch D-man position, wherever, basically, whenever the situation really calls for it. And it's going to be interesting because I don't think he's fast enough to be able to do that. But at the same time, I don't want his presence on this team in terms of taking ice time away from guys like Darren Radish. I thought Darren Radish had a very, very, very good offseason. I don't think that the Lightning are set with just Darren Radish. I think that on that third line, you still, do you take your chances with Hayden Fleury? My opinion, absolutely not. I don't know why you would chance it. Now, that also goes off the other possibility. Do the Lightning re-sign Ian Cole? My opinion, I don't think so. On the other side of that equation, do you put your bets on Zach Bogosian being able to play a full season? Therein lies the problem. I would rather a situation where they let Cole walk. Thank you for your nice year. Have a good one. Maybe have Bogo in and out of the lineup throughout the course of the season, and then you pack on the minutes in the playoffs with him. But you can't take away ice time from Darren Radish, because the first line, or I kind of tossed it around here and there on the last episode, but as for the official pairings, you would have Hedman and Perbix, which I think have been a very good combination all season long. And then you have Sergachev and Chernak. Now, that obviously leaves Radish on the third line. And I would be very upset. And I have all the confidence in the world that John Cooper knows well enough not to do this. But I think it would be very upsetting to me, as well as alarming to some Lightning fans, unless, he does not play well in camp, or, you're not hearing that he's progressed at all. But I would expect, or really assume, that Darren Radish is going to be the third line anchor for this Lightning team come opening night next year. So what do you do? Do you sub him in and out of the lineup with Bogosian, or because that's the other question. Do the Lightning let Bogosian just sit there and just collect dust? Injuries are going to happen, so I'm not too worried about that. But one has to look outside of the organization to a certain degree to see what is out there. I was tossing around the idea with my Locked On NHL Thursday host, Chris Basili of Locked On Avalanche, and I look at one defenseman in the free agent pool for this upcoming summer. And it's not just because of his name and, what we've seen him do in years past. But to me, to a certain degree, with that veteran leadership that he had, and call me crazy, maybe we could get somewhat of a discount on him. But John Klingberg is a very enticing name. I think it's a name that we definitely do need to look at. He is 30. Played in 67 games this year, had 33 points and 10 goals. That's pretty good in terms of goals for a defenseman, for your average defenseman. Now, is John Klingberg going to come to Tampa Bay, make less than what he made last year with $7 million, and be able to and want to play on the third line? Chances are no, but I feel like the allure of the Tampa Bay Lightning will play in that favor. One of the best in favor of them in terms of trying to convince him to come, where they're one of the best ran organizations in the league. You have a Hall of Fame coach in John Cooper. You already have a team around you to go there and win. The weather is beautiful, and all he has to do is come and do his job. He doesn't have to worry about politics. He doesn't have to worry about really anything. Plus, he does have a former teammate, like I said, if he does stick around, in Pat Maroon there. I'm sorry, not Pat Maroon, Corey Perry. So there's that as well. I look at the other defensemen. We could sit here and talk all day about who would probably be a good fit. I look at Dmitry Orlov. I don't know if he's going to want to come for less, because the whole big thing about these questions that we are asking ourselves, and that, can the Lightning get someone of high quality or mid-level quality for a third line. You know, the Lightning aren't going to pay a third line defenseman, I think, more than $3 million, maybe 3.5. And that's all dependent on, you know, if they could move guys, if they could move pieces, you know, whether it be for draft picks or for prospects. I think, you know, and like we said before, Alex Killorn, I think, will set the table for everything else to form around the Lightning. At the same time, the other piece that Lightning fans should look at, because really these two deals are very, you know, what the Lightning do with their third line defensive pairing, that last spot to fill, really depends on, you know, what happens with Ross Colton. He's going to be a restricted free agent. Didn't have the best season. I still think he has potential to hit that 25, 30 goal mark. I think he's a very talented player. I think he just had a very, you know, off year, as players tend to do. It was bound to happen rather now than you know, later. But everything I have heard and through whispers in here is that it's a very real possibility that the Lightning could very well trade his rights for whether it be a draft pick or whatever the case may be. Most likely a draft pick, probably. I would say probably a second rounder. I think that's the best you're going to get for him. I don't think he's worth a first by no means. You know, I think he has so much potential, but we've also seen, like this season, when it's not clicking, it can be very frustrating. A lot of miss open nets, a lot of just, you know, he can play physical, but that's pretty much where the buck stops with him. Now, there's other players I'm looking at. Defensemen, you know, we're not looking at forwards. Like I said, the Lightning don't need to go to the free agency market and look for forwards. They have tons of forwards, and any holes that they need to fill in their bottom six, they could go straight to Syracuse and look at that. So I'm not too worried about that. We're looking strictly at defensemen. I think when the other player that I really, really like a lot, that another player, restricted free agent, not sure how this is going to work out for him, but, and I doubt Seattle's going to want to part ways with him, but Vince Dunn from Seattle, having a spectacular year. One of those guys that is just always in the thick of it. A guy that I feel like could come here. Another guy like you know, kind of reminds me of the same kind of possibilities with John Klingberg. Guy that could come in and just be able to hit the ground running in the system that the Lightning have, buy into the culture. And, you know, that's maybe a stretch. I think maybe Klingberg, if he, you know, we saw him wait. It took a while for him to sign with a team last year. Could we see the same thing this season as this offseason as well? Could be. Who knows? It very well could be the case this year. Let me know in the comments below, you know, what are the defensemen out there, free agents, that you really like. Another one that I like I spoke about him on the last episode, Ryan Graves in New Jersey, unrestricted, made $3 million this year. Not sure that's the kind of deal that he's going to be looking for again. You know, we're just looking for someone to fill that last spot for the Lightning. But I also think, you know, like I said, not a problem, but, you know, if the Lightning can't settle on anybody, it doesn't hurt to go back to a familiar face and Ian Cole. So, you know, there's a lot of possibilities out there for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like I said, and I will keep preaching until they fill the position, that third line defensive spot is item A on their offseason moves. Now, if it's going to take Ross Colton his rights to trade him, then you got to do what you got to do to rebuild. I think the Lightning could live without Ross Colton rather than have a suspect spot in the third line and have to almost live or be shamed to live with Hayden Fleury in that third line pairing. I mean, nothing against him. It's just not a right fit. Maybe, and also maybe with Fleury next year, we'll see a little bit better of a performance. I'm not too optimistic about it. But yeah, I mean, the good thing that the Lightning they're in a good position. They picked a good year to really need a defenseman, and there's a lot of free agent, the UFAs especially, on the market this year. So I'm very curious as to where they spend their money. One last name I'm looking at is not Vladislav Namestnikov. I'm looking at Vladislav Garakov. That was a name that we probably all remember at the trade deadline, made $2 million this year. Left-handed shot, 27 years old, now in the Kings, had 19 points this year. Played 72 games, so he's sturdy and is able to go out there. Yeah, I mean, we could talk. We could spend an hour talking about this. There's so many possibilities for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Very curious. Do they trade Colton and then maybe spend a little bit more on a defenseman? Wouldn't be too mad about that. As much as you would like to see Ross come back and try to get it together, most likely, I feel like the Lightning like him way too much to give up on him just yet. But then again, who knows? Maybe Breece Boss will see sort of, hopefully this isn't the case, but maybe Breece Boss will wait too long and we'll see some sort of a repeat from the trade deadline where he's going to have to be almost forced into trading away Colton and maybe spending a little bit more money in order to get that defenseman. The other name that sticks out to me real quick is Justin Hall from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's had a little bit of a rocky playoffs thus far. And the other name that I really like, who's a UFA, is Nico Mikkola for that third line from the New York Rangers. Very tall player. I'd rather have him, sandpaper guy, go out there, lay big hits, could cycle the puck pretty well for a third line defenseman. So, the opportunities and the possibilities are endless with this Lightning team. So let us know in the comments below what you think about this upcoming offseason. Are you nervous? Are you worried? Are you excited like me? I'm excited. As many questions that we are going to have to wait quite some time to get answered, or hopefully not. This is one of the most exciting parts of the season, believe it or not. Playoffs and offseason. Those are my two favorite parts of the NHL season, of the NHL calendar year. So let me know in the comments below, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk more about the upcoming offseason. Lightning assistant coach, another one, might be out the door before the end of the summer. We'll talk about that as well. But in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk